Gulf of Oman, April 19th. The Mark 45 gun mount on the USS Spruance rotates toward a nearly 1,000-foot ship that has ignored every warning for 6 hours. Not toward the bow, toward the engine room. 3 rounds. The Tuska stops. You've seen the footage. You know the ship is in U.S. custody, engine destroyed, crew detained. The story has been running for 2 days. What none of the coverage explained is this. When that gun fired, the Spruance was also carrying 96 missiles. Tomahawks, SM-6 interceptors. Weapons capable of killing targets 900 nautical miles away. The combined firepower in those cells could have removed the Tuska from the ocean in under 60 seconds. And not one of them could have done what 3 rounds of 5-inch gun did. Not chose not to, could not, physically, by design. That is what this is actually about. Not what happened, what had to happen, and why. Every modern naval missile carries one engineering guarantee. The target does not survive the hit. No half measures. No disable the engine, keep the hull intact. No board and seize. The physics of modern warheads simply do not allow for it. To understand why the Spruance used a gun, you first have to understand why it could not use anything else. For 4 decades, the United States Navy has invested everything into standoff lethality. The doctrine is straightforward. Detect a threat before it detects you, and kill it from a distance it cannot reach. Every weapon in the Mark 41 vertical launch system was designed around that single principle. The SM-6 flies at Mach 3.5 to intercept targets 250 nautical miles away. The maritime strike Tomahawk crosses 900 nautical miles, updating its targeting mid-flight via data link to hit a moving ship. The Harpoon penetrates a steel hull and detonates inside, converting the ship's own structure into fragmentation, all of it engineered for one scenario: total war, destroy or be destroyed. But the naval blockade of Iranian ports, Operation Epic Fury, is not total war. A blockade is selective maritime control. You stop some ships, you let others through. And the MV Tuska was not a warship. It was a 964-foot container ship carrying cargo. Its crew were merchant sailors, civilians under international law. The Spruance needed to stop the Tuska, not sink it, not destroy it, stop it, disable its propulsion, keep it afloat, keep its crew alive, then put people aboard to seize it, and that is the problem no missile in existence can solve. Start with the Harpoon. The AGM-84 carries a 488-pound penetrating blast fragmentation warhead. It punches through the hull, detonates inside the ship, and destroys the structure from the inside out. Against a 66,000-ton container ship like the Tuska, the warhead breaches the double hull, water floods in, the ship lists, containers shift and fall overboard. You do not get a disabled ship, you get a maritime disaster. The maritime strike Tomahawk is worse. Block 5A carries a 1,000-pound warhead, more than double the Harpoon. It was designed to kill warships at 900 nautical miles. Against the Tuska, a 1,000-pound detonation inside a cargo hold triggers a chain reaction. Nearly 1,000 feet of container ship becomes a drifting fortress of fire in the Gulf of Oman. The crew, Iranian civilians, do not have time to abandon ship. The SM-6 in anti-ship mode carries the smallest warhead of the 3, 140 pounds of blast fragmentation. But it impacts at Mach 3.5. The kinetic energy alone causes catastrophic structural damage, and every SM-6 fired consumes one of 96 VLS cells permanently. The Spruance cannot reload at sea. You are spending a $4.3 million interceptor to shoot an unarmed cargo ship, and you still sink it. Every missile on the Spruance can kill the Tuska. Not a single one can make it stop and stay afloat. Missiles are the weapons of war. Blockade enforcement does not need war. It needs restraint. And restraint is the one capability no missile has ever delivered. So the missiles are off the table entirely, which leaves the Spruance with one option: the simplest, oldest weapon on board, a gun. To regain escalation control, the Spruance surrenders the one thing every modern warship is built to preserve: distance. It stops being a missile platform hiding over the horizon and becomes a gunship. Close enough to see the target with the naked eye. Close enough to choose exactly where the shell lands. The Mark 45 Mod 4, 5-inch 62 caliber naval gun. Rate of fire, 16 to 20 rounds per minute. maximum range over 20 nautical miles. Each round, a 70-pound high-explosive shell leaving the barrel at 2,600 feet per second. The gun has been on the foredeck of American destroyers in one form or another since 1945. But the Mark 45's real value is not in its specifications. Its value is in what those specifications cannot do. A 70-pound high-explosive shell at 2,600 feet per second punches through the commercial-grade steel hull of the Tuska, roughly 3/4 of an inch thick, the way a fist goes through paper. The shell carries a delay fuse. It does not detonate on contact with the hull. It penetrates, enters the engine room, and detonates inside. The blast pressure and fragmentation shred the high-pressure fuel lines, destroy the cooling systems, and crack the engine block of the massive 2-stroke marine diesel. The engine loses pressure and dies almost instantly. But here is what the 70-pound shell cannot do. It cannot break the keel. It cannot rupture the watertight bulkheads that divide the hull into sealed compartments. It cannot generate enough blast energy to trigger a chain detonation in adjacent cargo holds. The damage is entirely localized. The ship stops. The ship does not sink. The ship does not create an environmental catastrophe. This is the fundamental difference between a missile and a gun. A missile is a binary weapon, on or off, fire or hold, kill or miss. There is no middle ground. A gun is analog. You fire one warning shot across the bow, then 2 rounds into the superstructure, then into the engine room. Each step can be paused. Each step gives the other side a chance to comply. Each step is a rung on an escalation ladder that climbs in increments, not in leaps. And the Spruance climbed every rung, 6 hours of it, not because the crew was hesitant, because the rules of engagement demand documentation. Every radio call logged, every flare time-stamped, every warning shot recorded. 6 hours of evidence proving the Tuska refused to comply, not by accident, but by deliberate choice. The legal record is unassailable. Unlike the VLS cells, the gun does not run dry. It can enforce the same sequence against the next ship and the one after that. A missile is a single-use decision. A gun is a repeatable policy. The 5-inch shells did their job. The Tuska's propulsion is dead. The ship drifts. But here is the detail no coverage has addressed. A dead ship is not a captured ship. The engine is destroyed, but the crew is still on board. The bridge still functions. The Tuska is not controlled. It is merely stopped. To take control, someone has to climb aboard. Kinetic force disables machines. Only human beings disable willpower. The Mark 45 killed the engine, but only a Marine standing on the bridge with a rifle in hand can make the captain surrender control of his vessel. That requires the most dangerous maneuver in naval operations, putting people on a hostile deck. The team that boards the Tuska comes from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. 2,200 Marines deployed in theater, but only 10 to 15 of them execute this boarding. The rest maintain a security perimeter from the Spruance and from overhead helicopters. This is VBSS. Visit, board, search, and seizure. And the Tuska is the first ship in the entire Operation Epic Fury to be physically boarded. Dozens of vessels before it turned around after radio warnings. The blockade worked by presence alone. The Tuska is the first ship to call the bluff, and for that reason alone, it must become a precedent. The method of entry is fast rope, an MH-60R. Seahawk hovers alongside the Tuska's deck approximately 30 to 40 feet above the surface. Marines slide down a braided 2-inch rope. No harness, no belay device, no mechanical brake. The only thing controlling their descent is the friction between heat-resistant tactical gloves and the rope. They carry full battle equipment, body armor, helmet, rifle, ammunition, breaching tools. 40 to 60 pounds of gear on their bodies. The deck beneath them is pitching with ocean swells. The landing zone moves constantly. Fast rope descent, roughly 40 feet in 3 to 5 seconds. A descent rate of 8 to 12 feet per second. One mistake, a glove slipping, a gust of wind, the ship rolling at the wrong moment, means falling onto a steel deck or into the gap between the warship and the cargo ship. Once on deck, the objective is the bridge. On a ship this size, 966 feet, the length of the Eiffel Tower laid on its side, The bridge sits at the stern, elevated above the cargo stacks. The path from the boarding point to the bridge runs through narrow corridors, steep stairwells, steel doors, and sealed compartments. This is close-quarters battle terrain, more complex than most urban environments on land. The VBSS team must reach and secure the bridge before the crew can destroy cargo, erase navigational records, sabotage steering and communication systems, or contact Iran to request military intervention. And here is the complication that makes this harder than a combat raid. The crew of the Tuska are civilians, unarmed under international law. The Marines must control them non-violently if at all possible, with force only if the crew actively resists. The rules of engagement are more restrictive than a conventional battlefield. No technology replaces this. A drone can watch the deck from above, but it cannot open a steel door, search a container, read shipping manifests, or compel a captain to surrender his vessel. A robot cannot tell the difference between a crew member who is resisting and one who is simply terrified. That judgment, reading a face, hearing a tone, deciding in a fraction of a second whether to use force or restraint, exists only in the human brain. And under international maritime law, a vessel is legally seized only when a human being from the capturing force physically sets foot on the deck and declares control. No autonomous system satisfies that requirement. The seizure of the Tuska is not valid until a Marine stands on its bridge. The Mark 45 broke the lock. The Marines entered the room. Which brings us to the question that reframes everything. If the Navy's most expensive weapons cannot enforce a blockade, and the weapons that can enforce it are a gun whose design dates to 1945 and a team of Marines on a rope, then what exactly were those 96 VLS cells built for? Here is the answer that changes the equation entirely. Those 96 cells did not fire at the Tuska. They were never supposed to. Those missiles are not the weapons of the blockade. They are the weapons that protect the blockade. When 10 Marines are sliding down a rope onto the deck of the Tuska, the Spruance is stationary, at close range, and fully committed to the boarding operation. If an Iranian fighter jet takes off from Bandar Abbas, the SM-6 kills it at 250 nautical miles. If a Shahed drone launches from the coast, the Aegis radar tracks it, and the CIWS shreds it. If a shore-based anti-ship missile fires from a concealed launcher, the electronic warfare suite and the SM-6 intercept it before it closes range. Without that umbrella, the boarding never happens. Without 96 cells of air defense, the Spruance cannot afford to park alongside a drifting container ship for the hours it takes to complete a VBSS operation. Without Aegis, the Mark 45 never gets to fire its surgical rounds into the engine room because the ship is too busy defending itself to enforce anything. A naval blockade moves through 4 levels: presence, warning, disabling, seizure. Dozens of ships turned around at level 1. The Tuska forced all 4. And that is precisely why it matters beyond this single incident. The Tuska is not just a seized ship. It is a loudspeaker. Every Iranian-flagged vessel now knows the United States does not bluff. It shoots. But it shoots just enough to kill the engine while keeping the crew alive. Then it puts boots on the deck and takes the ship. Remember the question we started with. Why would the most advanced warship in the world carry 96 missiles and choose not to fire a single one? Here is the answer. Here. Those 96 VLS cells are not useless. They are the reason the boarding happened at all. Without the Aegis shield overhead, without SM-6 holding the airspace, without the deterrent of 96 cells of vertical launch lethality, the Spruance cannot afford to stop alongside a drifting ship and put Marines on a rope. The Mark 45 never fires. The Marines never board. The most expensive weapons on the ship exist, so the cheapest weapon on the ship can do its job. And here is the question no one is asking. Every navy in the world is racing to build hypersonic missiles. Longer range, bigger warheads, faster kill chains. All of it designed for one thing: destroying targets from as far away as possible. But on April 19th, the most advanced destroyer on the planet had to close to visual range, fire a gun whose design dates to 1945, and send 10 Marines down a rope onto a drifting ship. Because controlling the ocean requires something that no missile has ever been able to deliver: restraint. The Tuska now sits in U.S. custody, engine cold, crew detained, cargo impounded. Not because the Spruance overwhelmed it with firepower, because the Spruance chose deliberately, precisely, and with 6 hours of patience to use the minimum force necessary to take a ship without sinking it, and then sent human beings aboard to finish what the gun started. So the next time someone quotes you the range of a hypersonic missile or the payload of a next-generation warhead, ask yourself this: can that weapon stop a ship without sinking it? Can it board a vessel without killing the crew? Can it enforce a blockade without starting a war? If not, then what exactly does it control?